world where justice feels like a distant echo, a young boy dares to believe in something more. Inspired by stories of valor and selflessness, he dreams of becoming more than a spectator, of stepping into the role of a hero the world so desperately needs. Hi, Daily Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an Indian action crime movie called BAGHEERA. Stay tuned and take care. The film begins with a young boy named Vedanth Prabhakar, donning a superhero cape, his eyes filled with dreams of becoming a hero who helps those in need. That same day, his mother, Rani, a schoolteacher, was giving a lesson about India's legendary heroes when she learns that Vedanth had jumped off their balcony in an attempt to fly. Rushing to the hospital, she finds him being treated for a broken leg. Later, as they sit together on the hospital bed, flipping through a comic book, Vedanth innocently asks why he can't be a superhero with powers. Rani explains that real heroes aren't found in comic books or movies. They are the people who live selflessly for others. Soldiers, doctors, even ordinary individuals who rise above their limitations. She points to Vedanth's father, Prabhakar, a police officer who fights villains every day in his uniform. Her words left a lasting impression on young Vedanth, igniting a lifelong resolve to become a real-world hero. One stormy night, a group of people on a boat was ambushed by a man named Rana and his gang. As some tried to escape, Rana captured them with a fishing net. The captives were gathered and beaten mercilessly. Amid their screams, Rana took a knife from one of his men, brutally severed a man's hand, and killed him without hesitation. Years later, Vedanth completes his police training and is posted to Mangalore. In one scene, Vedanth is shown pledging his loyalty, vowing to be faithful and bear true allegiance to India and its constitution. The next day, Vedanth is warmly welcomed by his fellow officers. During the meeting, he addresses them, and they, in turn, introduce themselves by name. Later that same day, Vedanth and Narayana, his senior colleague, went undercover into town near the riverside, where illegal drug activities and human trafficking were rampant. He also briefed Vedanth on a man named Pujari, who is heavily involved in criminal activities in the riverside area and has many people working under him. Narayana also warned Vedanth about another man named Kotian, describing him as an extremely powerful white-collar criminal who controls the entire port. Narayana emphasized that Kotian's territory was untouchable, advising Vedanth to stay away from him. After listening to everything Narayana said, Vedanth sat silently in his car, reflecting on the situation without uttering a word. The next day, a fiery encounter with a woman named Sneha, bold and independent, stands up to a group of thugs harassing schoolgirls and inspires the girls to fight back. Her confidence and courage captivate Vedanth. As the thugs insulted Sneha, the group of girls retaliated by beating the thugs and hitting them with their lunchboxes until they drove the group away. Vedanth and Narayan witnessed the entire scene as the girls, smiling triumphantly, jumped up with Sneha in excitement. Later that night, a party was held for senior police officers. When Captain Prakash walked in, he was greeted by Prabhakar, Vedanth's father, who introduced him to two other officers along with Vedanth. Shortly after, a waiter arrived with drinks. As Captain Prakash was about to take a sip, Vedanth stopped him, reminding him that drinking alcohol while wearing the police belt was inappropriate. Vedanth insisted that he remove the belt as a sign of respect before drinking. While Prabhakar tried to intervene, Vedanth stood his ground. Captain Prakash agreed with Vedanth, acknowledging he was right, and respectfully removed his belt before taking a drink. The next day, Vedanth began relentlessly raiding drug smugglers and illegal gun dealers, working tirelessly day and night. His actions left the criminals scrambling to hide. The following morning, during an interview, a journalist named Rangana, known for speaking the truth, commented on Vedanth's efforts. He said, "Many gold medalists like Vedanth have come and gone. Let's see how long the sound of his guns lasts amidst the waves of crime in this city." The next day, Vedanth and his father visited an old friend to discuss a potential marriage proposal for Vedanth, as their families wanted him to marry the friend's daughter. However, Vedanth wasn't interested in getting married. Tired of the conversation, he stood up to leave, but just then, Sneha walked into the room. Her arrival left Vedanth speechless, and he sat back down, captivated by her presence. Vedanth's father suggested that the two of them go outside to talk. Outside, Vedanth remained quiet as Sneha broke the silence, saying she didn't like the idea of marriage either, but had agreed to meet because of her father. She explained that due to their different personalities and lifestyles, they might not have enough time to understand one another. She proposed that they spend time together first and get to know each other better. If things worked out, they could consider marriage. Otherwise, they could part ways and live their lives separately. Speechless, Vedanth nodded in agreement. The spark of their connection brought a rare sense of happiness to Vedanth's. As they spent more time together, both began to believe in love. One day, while driving together, they came across a woman in labor by the roadside. Without hesitation, they rushed her to the hospital. Afterward, Sneha remarked bitterly, "God is so cruel for giving all the pain and suffering to women. At the very least, he could have given the pain of childbirth to men." Vedanth responded, saying God isn't foolish. He knows men don't have the strength of women, which is why the responsibility of childbirth is given to women. If men had to endure that pain, there wouldn't be a single man left in the world. His words touched Sneha deeply, leaving her speechless and thoughtful. The next day, a mother and her young daughter were returning from their daily work when a group of gangsters ambushed them and threatened the mother, kidnapping her daughter, leaving the woman crying helplessly on the ground. At the police station, Vedanth's men were interrogating a suspect using harsh methods. The suspect revealed that his boss's name was Jackie and dared Vedanth to bring Jackie to the station if he had the courage to enter Pujari's area. Determined, Vedanth ignored Narayana's warnings and led a raid into Pujari's territory. Chaos erupted as gangsters threw stones at the police, who fought back with their sticks. Meanwhile, Jackie fled the scene, but Vedanth chased him through the streets. Along the way, two men tried to block Vedanth, and a group of children added to the chaos, but Vedanth managed to navigate through them. He grabbed a flat stone and struck Jackie on the forehead. As the fight intensified, Vedanth dragged Jackie through the crowd, fending off his gang with a stick. At that moment, Pujari appeared, shouting at Vedanth and grabbing Narayana by his police uniform. Furious, Vedanth retaliated by kicking Pujari, sending him flying into a large bowl of water. He then took both Jackie and Pujari into custody. Shortly afterward, Kotian received a call informing him of Pujari's arrest. While at the station, Vedanth noticed the woman whose daughter had been kidnapped by thugs earlier. Just then, he received a call from Captain Prakash, requesting him to come to his office immediately. When Vedanth arrived at Captain Prakash's office, he was met with shocking news and a heartbreaking truth. Captain Prakash told him to stop whatever he was doing, saying, "Until now, you've done what felt right for himself, but from now on, he'll do what feels right for them." He demanded that Vedanth follow his orders, assuring him that if everything was done systematically, everyone would be happy. Suddenly, Vedanth's father stormed into the office and started scolding him, revealing that Captain Prakash had given them their positions for a bribe of 50 lakh rupees. Vedanth's world shattered in an instant. Captain Prakash dismissed Vedanth as being just a hot-tempered kid and instructed Prabhakar to teach him how things were really done. The room filled with tension as father and son exchanged emotional words, filled with anger and disappointment. Toward the end of their argument, Prabhakar called Vedanth a great son and urged him to move forward. He explained that his mother had lived for 6 more years despite having cancer, only because they could afford her treatments thanks to the bribe money. He told Vedanth not to worry too much and said, "If we fight back, we'll be helpless. You need to learn to be part of the system and live with a mask." That same night, Vedanth went to the beach, sat on the rocks by the shore, and drowned himself in alcohol. Confused and depressed after hearing the truth from his father, he reflected on everything. Frustrated, he threw his drink away and eventually fell asleep on the beach. The next morning, Vedanth was running late. At the station, the kidnapped girl's mother was there, screaming at the officers and insulting them for not doing their jobs. She angrily pushed Narayana, accusing the police of destroying her daughter's life and saying they didn't deserve to be called officers. Vedanth arrived on the scene, drunk and unstable, and headed straight to his office without a word. The young girl, overwhelmed and hopeless, stood silently as her mother screamed in pain and cried uncontrollably. Believing that all hope was lost, the girl walked away unnoticed. She picked up a can of petrol left behind by an officer, along with a box of matches. Moments later, she poured the petrol on herself and set herself on fire, committing suicide. The horrific incident shook Vedanth to his core, leaving him filled with guilt and rage. Everyone was devastated, and Vedanth was filled with rage upon learning the truth about her death. In his anger, he handed some money to Narayana and instructed him to file a report claiming that the girl had committed suicide due to a breakup. He then walked away from the scene, consumed by guilt and frustration. His mother's words echoed in his heart. Unable to find peace, he walked out into the pouring rain, draped in a cloth, and disappeared into the darkness. Meanwhile, the gang of thugs who had kidnapped the girl were gathered together, discussing the incident. One of them, visibly shaken, lamented her death, saying, "She was too beautiful to just die like that." Suddenly, a noise interrupted their conversation. One of the thugs went to investigate but was kicked back, slamming into a metal barrier. Realizing something was wrong, the gangs ran out and he emerged from the fog and confronts the thugs, taking them down one by one with brutal efficiency. Some tried to flee, but were cornered by Vedanth. In the pouring rain, Vedanth single-handedly killed every thug, sparing no one. His fury is unmatched, and the scene is witnessed by an orphan boy who hides in fear. By the time the police arrive, Vedanth has disappeared, leaving behind a trail of bodies, strewn across the ground, severed limbs. They found dead bodies scattered everywhere, some dismembered and others burned inside. The officers find the terrified orphan and ask how many people carried out the massacre. Trembling, the boy raises a single finger. When they ask who was responsible, the boy shouted, "BAGHEERA!" The next day, the crime scene was crowded with TV crews and police officers. When Vedanth arrived, he pretended to know nothing, casually walked in, and came out shortly without saying or doing much. Over the course of a week, Vedanth unleashed his wrath in the dark, leaving dead bodies hanging on buildings as a grim warning to others. By day, Vedanth wore the uniform of a morally compromised police officer, blending into the corruption he despised. By night, he became BAGHEERA, a symbol of hope for the helpless and a nightmare for the wicked. He formed a covert alliance with an unlikely group, Narayana, a seasoned investigator. Together, they waged a silent war on the criminal underworld, determined to dismantle the powerful syndicates thriving on exploitation and greed. One night, Sneha visited Vedanth at his home. She was heartbroken because he had been ignoring her calls and messages. When she confronted him, Vedanth coldly admitted that he hadn't responded because he didn't want to. He told her he didn't like her and had no intention of marrying her. Devastated and disappointed, Sneha told Vedanth to live his life as he saw fit, and she would live hers. The next day, Rangana, a fearless journalist, was working on a story exposing Pujari's crimes. His boss at the newspaper confronted him, demanding he drop the story and stop putting Pujari on the front page. Rangana refused, threatening to publish it on social media if the article wasn't printed. Later that night, Pujari, having been tipped off by the newspaper publisher, paid a visit to Rangana's house. He dragged Rangana and his family outside. Enraged by Rangana's threat to expose his secrets, Pujari killed Rangana in front of his wife and son. The next morning, Rangana's body was found in the street. Narayana informed Vedanth of the journalist's death. That night, Vedanth donned his BAGHEERA costume and stormed into Pujari's hideout. He killed both Pujari and his accomplice Siddhi, leaving their bodies in the middle of the street as a grim message. Meanwhile, a man named Yogi visited Kotiyan in his hideout and issued a chilling threat. He gave Kotiyan 3 days to fulfill his deal, warning that if he failed, Rana would come for him. Kotiyan, visibly terrified, began sweating as Yogi left. Desperate to meet the deadline, Kotiyan ordered his men to start kidnapping both adults and children. Over the next few days, the city was plunged into chaos as the rate of kidnapping surged. The police station became overcrowded with distraught families filing missing person complaints. Vedanth was horrified by the number of victims. While investigating, he discovered the location of the kidnapped victims and raided the site at night. During the raid, Vedanth was spotted by the kidnappers, who chased him. A gunfight ensued, and Vedanth was shot, forcing him to dive into the sea to escape. Wounded and barely conscious, he made his way to Sneha's house, where he collapsed in her arms. She tended to his wounds and begged him to rest. But Vedanth, stubborn as ever, refused and walked away. That same night, Vedanth found Kotian at his home. Kotian had just killed his wife and daughter, driven mad by fear. He confessed to Vedanth that he had witnessed horrors far greater than anything Vedanth could imagine. Kotian warned of Rana, a ruthless crime lord who ruled an illegal organ trafficking empire and struck terror even in the hearts of monsters. Then, Kotian placed a gun to his head and took his own life. The next day, Guru, a senior officer, addressed the police department in a tense meeting. He demanded that all cases be put on hold and that the department focus solely on capturing Bagheera, dead or alive. At the station, Vedanth searched for old files on Rana. Narayana informed him of a skilled hacker named Akash who could bypass any security system, including the police database. Vedanth visited Akash, and after some persuasion, the two began working together to uncover Rana's network. In the meantime, Vedanth tracked a secret facility in a slum where human organs were being harvested. He stormed the facility, fought off the traffickers, and killed them all. When one man begged for his life, claiming he was doing it to save his elderly father, Vedanth retorted, "To protect a 75-year-old man, you killed a 15-year-old girl. Is that justice?" He then killed the man. The next day, Guru and his team investigated the crime scene. They were shocked to find that none of the rescued victims were from Mangalore, indicating a large-scale trafficking operation. Elsewhere, Yogi received news that Bagheera had destroyed his operations. Panicked and desperate, he met Rana at a shipping facility. Yogi begged for his life, blaming Bagheera for the setbacks. Rana, cold and calculating, spared Yogi, saying, "Until I find someone who can surpass you in your work, you're safe, but I'll handle Bagheera myself." Rana then instructed Yogi to turn on his phone, which had been off since the slum raid. As soon as the phone was activated, Vedanth received Yogi's location. Vedanth stormed the facility, only to discover it was a trap set by Rana. Outnumbered by Rana and his men, Vedanth fought valiantly, throwing grenades and killing dozens of attackers. Rana, however, used his men as shields, while Vedanth armed a gun at him before shooting him, and Rana managed to dodge the bullet and then left the scene. However, Vedanth continued fighting Rana men, which almost caused his life. Later that night, Sneha was tending to Vedanth's wounds while crying. Vedanth, looking at her tear-streaked face, said, "I warned you, Sneha. A life with me isn't worth living. Today, I came back injured. Someday, it might be my corpse. What happiness can you find in marrying a man like me?" Through her tears, Sneha replied, "I can live happily with a man who values a good home, but I would be even prouder to be the widow of a man who sees the nation as his home." She hugged him tightly, refusing to let go, sobbing as she held on to him. The next morning, Guru received a complaint from one of his colleagues about a kidnapping case approved by Narayana that had mysteriously vanished from their system. Surprised, Guru ordered his colleague to summon an officer from the Mangalore station. Soon, Govind stood in Guru's office for questioning. Guru asked about everyone in the department, specifically Vedanth. "Vedanth is the batch topper, a gold medalist. How can officers like him turn corrupt?" Guru inquired. Govind hesitated before replying. "He wasn't always like this. When he joined the force, he was strict and unyielding. He never took a single bribe, and crime in the city had significantly decreased because of him. Things changed. The commissioner berated him when his efforts drew negative political attention. And the final blow came when a girl, a rape victim, committed suicide in front of the station. That incident broke him." After Govind left, Guru began investigating Vedanth. He scanned photos of Vedanth and Bagheera, and the truth hit him like a thunderbolt. Vedanth had been Bagheera all along. Meanwhile, one of Guru's colleagues revealed the truth by video calling Yogi while at the office. Yogi saw everything and immediately showed the footage to Rana, exposing Vedanth's secret identity. Later, Akash traced Yogi's phone to a port and immediately informed Vedanth. Rushing out of his house, Vedanth accidentally woke his father, who, sensing something was wrong, broke into Vedanth's basement. There, he found the crime board detailing Vedanth's activities as Bagheera. Heartbroken and devastated, he realized his son had been killing criminals under the mask of Bagheera. On his way to the port, Vedanth received a call from Sneha. To his horror, Rana had kidnapped her. "I know where you're headed, Vedanth," Rana sneered. "If you come after me, I'll kill her. If you don't, 50 people will die." Faced with an impossible decision, Vedanth chose justice over personal happiness. At the port, he saved the hostages, who were about to drown, but lost Sneha in the process. Rana brutally tortured her, stabbing her toes with a hammer, pulling out her fingernails and burning her skin with hot metal. In her final moments, Rana struck her with a metal rod, killing her. The pain of losing Sneha threatened to consume Vedanth, but he remained resolute. Moments later, Guru and CBI officers arrived at the port. As Bagheera held onto the chain to save the hostages, Guru's men surrounded him with guns drawn. Bagheera was arrested and taken into custody. The next day, Vedanth was being transported to an undisclosed location when Chetan, a CBI officer, pleaded for Vedanth's life, asking not to execute him. His request was denied. At a stop, Chetan killed the officers, wanting to Vedanth, freeing him. Guru, now sees the righteousness of Vedanth's cause, shifted his perspective. He offered Vedanth his support and promised to help him bring Rana to justice. During his investigation, Guru uncovered his own son's involvement in Rana's criminal enterprise. Devastated, Guru revealed to Vedanth that Rana was transporting 2,000 kidnapped victims on a freight train to the Rameswaram fishing harbour. Once he reaches the harbour, there's nothing there can do. In a breathtaking final act, Vedanth stormed Rana's heavily fortified stronghold, with memories of Sneha and his team's cutting-edge tools driving him forward. Battling through waves of enemies aboard the moving train, Vedanth confronted Rana in a brutal and exhilarating duel. In the end, Vedanth emerged victorious, killing Rana and dismantling his empire. The kidnapped victims were rescued and safely returned to their families. As the dust settled, Vedanth disappeared into the shadows once more, leaving town on a bus. Meanwhile, Guru confronts the central minister, Ramaswamy, exposing his involvement with Rana. Guru demanded his resignation and surrender. When Ramaswamy refused, Guru warned him, "Bagheera will hunt you down." Though Vedanth's personal journey was steeped in loss and sacrifice, his resolve remained unbroken. He continued to fight for the voiceless, a symbol of hope in a broken world. As the movie ends, Bagheera remains a watchful guardian, a hero in the shadows. The end. If you liked the video, please kindly like, share and subscribe for more video like this. Thank you for watching.